Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
The headlines about Rhode Island's iconic AT Cross Company have been a little confusing ever since reports surfaced that the firm had sold its famous pen business. Turns out that despite a round of corporate do-si-do, AT Cross remains alive and well, selling the writing utensils it's been producing since the 1800s and still headquartered in Lincoln. These days, AT Cross pens are sold in more than 80 countries. President Obama uses them to sign major bills like the healthcare law, and even Queen Elizabeth used one to sign a new Commonwealth charter. This week on Executive Suite, AT Cross Company CEO, Chad Mellen. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Chad, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ted.
And you gave me the first opportunity I've ever had to introduce Queen Elizabeth into the Executive Suite. That'd be quite a suite if she was here.
Indeed, a dedicated cross user.
Exactly, the royal suite we could call it. So, usually I start the show, I ask someone, what's your business? What do you do? I think a lot of people are probably going to be familiar with AT Cross, but just in case someone maybe isn't making the connection yet, what's your business? What do you do at AT Cross?
Well, first, before we start, I think if you're talking about cross, we've got to talk about pens, which means you can't have a big pen and interview me. So we need to make sure that we've got the right product here.
Perfect.
So AT Cross is a business that has been making writing instruments since 1846. And for the vast majority of that time period, right here in Rhode Island. So the company recently underwent a transaction where the public company, which had previously been named AT Cross, decided to split off two operating divisions. The subsequent company that's named AT Cross is the company that was privately sold. The remaining company, Costa, is a sunglass division. It was the second operating division.
I bet we're already losing people just because it was a complicated, the end result is pretty easy to understand. AT Cross is still doing what it always did out of Lincoln. But what happened, so first we had in July, Lincoln, Rhode Island-based AT Cross sells its pens and accessories unit for $60 million. That sounded like AT Cross is getting rid of pens.
Right.
And then in September, we had AT Cross changes its name to Costa Inc., reflecting a new direction. And what you're saying is part of what AT Cross sold was the name AT Cross.
Absolutely. So let me see if I can go through the chronology. Maybe that helps. In late January, early February, the public company, which at that point in time was named AT Cross.
Public, so it's traded on the stock market.
On the NASDAQ. It had two operating divisions, two groups of companies underneath it. One was a company called Costa, and the other was Cross. So even though the public company shared the same name as the operating company that has been making pens in Rhode Island and other places since 1846, even though they shared the same name, they were two separate groups. So there was the optical group, and then there was this pen group.
And you were running the pen group even before all this.
Indeed. So in February, we announced that we were looking to understand if we could maximize shareholder value by selling the pen group, also known as Cross. In July, we sold that group. We signed a letter of intent to sell that group to a company called Clarion Capital Partners out of New York. It's a private equity firm that wanted to add Cross, the pen operating group, to their portfolio. Then September 6th, we closed on that deal. So all this really has been as a financial transaction. The fact that Cross has, for many, many years, made writing instruments and sold writing instruments, and now continues to make and sell writing instruments under the Cross brand name continues. That hasn't changed and will not change. We're hoping to be around for another 167 years.
So it's like you had a tent called AT Cross, and there were two bags in it. You had the bag of Cross pen stuff and the bag of Costa sunglasses stuff. And AT Cross, the tent, sold off the same named pen piece, but also gave away the AT Cross name, so now the whole tent is called Costa and just has Costa in it.
Right. So it made sense for the remaining public company that had, as you said, this bag of sunglasses in it, to rename itself, because it no longer had anything to do with the pen business. Unfortunately, the way a lot of this information came out, it looked like not only did the business get sold, but it was shut down, which absolutely is not the case. We have 145 employees in Rhode Island, 900 employees across the globe that are still manufacturing and selling wonderful cross-quality products that we've all come to love for the last 167 years.
I think that's going to be clear to people. Now, Costa, we were talking before the show, the sunglasses that came into AT Cross, and I should say this was before your time with the company. That was in 2003.
Correct.
10 years later, they've split off again. We're back to Cross does pens, Costa does sunglasses. Can you give me a sense, what was the thinking inside the company that it was better at this point to have them be two different independent businesses?
Sure. As a public organization, a public company, Cross's duty is really to maximize value for the shareholders. When the Cross public company bought Costa, the sunglass group, in 2003, they bought a great brand in an organically growing category. Basically, the polarized sunglass business grew and is growing naturally. And Costa did a great job in gaining share. The board made a decision that they could do better by the shareholders by investing more into the sunglass business than into the pen business, and essentially made the decision that the shareholders would be better off if the public company remained focused on the sunglass group. And they thought that the writing instrument division would be better off under private ownership.
So give me a sense, what does it mean inside AT Cross? Has anything changed for the people, you were their boss when it was a division of the public company, now you're their boss as an independent company? I mean, is anything different for folks?
It really isn't. You walk in and you're under the same Cross name over the front door. People are still using Cross pens to write with. The name on the paychecks is still Cross. There really hasn't been a lot of difference in the day-to-day. What we believe is the big difference is that under a private ownership structure, our investment time horizon, kind of the time frame by which we make decisions, is going to be longer. And that should be beneficial for us as a company versus when we were under a public ownership, where we were more focused on quarter to quarter earnings and results.
That's a very interesting point, because you hear a lot of talk right now about the question of whether public companies are so focused, and have to be because of the markets, on their quarterly earnings that they can't necessarily, unless they're massive like Apple and can thumb their nose at the market, say, all right, we're investing a huge amount of money in this long-term play that may not pay off for 6 years, and that's a lot of quarters in 6 years.
Right.
So you think it really could benefit how you run Cross to be private?
We absolutely do. There's the opportunity for us to put more investment and capital back into the business that may be a little more risky than what the public company ownership was able to tolerate. So we believe that there are opportunities that we'll now be able to take advantage of that we think will ultimately accelerate growth and drive value for our new shareholders, our private shareholders.
All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about those opportunities and what's in store for AT Cross, as well as how you get people to buy pens when they're all tapping away on iPhones. Let's stick with us here on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and I'm joined by the CEO of the AT Cross Company, which is still alive and well here in Rhode Island, Chad Mellen. And Chad, I mentioned just before, it seems like we're in a digital age. I'm a reporter. I still have to use a pen a lot of the time if I'm scribbling at an event. But one person sent in on Twitter. They said to me, Ted, penmanship seems to be going out the window. How do you avoid sort of being the dodo of pens?
Right,
What's your view on pens in 2013?
Well, first of all, I do not believe we're a buggy whip industry at all, in any way, shape, or form. And when people usually ask me that question, they have a pen in their hand. So I think what's happened is people do use digital equipment more to capture and transmit information, which means that we call it usage occasion for the writing instruments have declined, that kind of the amount of time you might be using your pen. But in terms of the purchasing of writing instruments, we have not seen any kind of real significant decline there. If you look at the writing instrument category as a whole, last year, 55% of every adult human bought a writing instrument.
Really?
Absolutely. It's a very big industry. It's pervasive.
I think it's $2 billion roughly globally on non-disposable writing instruments.
Right. So that $2 billion market is growing much faster outside of developed countries like the United States or Western Europe. When you look at markets like India or China, it's an explosive category. And that's leading to this overall growth in the $2 billion market. So absolutely, it's a relevant category. And I think also when you look at our category, our portion of the writing instrument, Cross makes a premium writing instrument product. Our products sell for well more north of what a Bic or a Sharpie would sell for. People are buying those for more than just writing. There's an expression of who they are. It's like their watch or their handbag. So it's an accessory as well as a functional purchase.
And you know, one of the things that was interesting to me going through some of the financial information that's been put out there, you spend almost $3 million a year on R&D, research and development. I mentioned it to one of the guys in the newsroom. He said, "I figured after Quills they were set. You know, we had it done." What are you researching? What's the innovation in pens?
So there's a lot of ways that Cross as a business will be growing over the next several years. And the fundamental underpinning of our growth, which may be distribution growth, increased presence online, is the product, though. We really are focusing on the product. And we believe we've got an approach to writing instruments that's very different than a lot of our competitors. So we think, some real functional benefits to a lot of our products that are unique. So for example, this fall we've brought out an entire series of what we call tech products. These are products that work with they're stylus products that work with things like your smartphone or work with your tablet. We are bringing out an antibacterial pen that literally is the only pen in the world that if you touch it, it kills the bacteria on it. So you can pass it back and forth to people and not worry about infecting other people, whatever kind of germs you may have. That's the kind of research that we're doing. In addition to, fundamentally, how do you write better? Things like, how does the ink flow on paper better and smoother and improve the writing experience for people? So there's a lot of things that we're working on from a technology perspective, from the actual pen itself, and the writing experience itself.
And you mentioned China and India and growth internationally. I would also think, though, knowing what incomes are in those countries, are you aiming for a different part of the market, or is it as a high-end market develops in those countries, you go to them?
What really happens is you see in these developing markets growth of educated middle-class consumers. And there's two things they want to do. They want to show off that they are recently arrived into the middle class, and that's where the accessory part of our business plays. But also, they're increasingly educated and they have access to education. So the idea that they are writing more and they're using a writing instrument more is prevalent, and they want to show that too. So not only does the pen become a functional tool again, but it becomes this accessory and this badge that I've achieved something in these marketplaces.
Of course, India, formerly part of the British Empire, which was ruled by Queen Elizabeth, who uses a cross pen, as we saw.
And the Prime Minister of India uses a cross pen.
Yes, he does as well. I saw a photo of that. I'm wondering how, and I of course showed President Obama as well at the top, how do you land those kinds of accounts? How do you become the pen of the Queen, the pen of the White House?
Well, we don't actively go and search and seek these people. This is not something that we do from a public relations perspective by giving people pen for free. They literally come and buy those products from us.
So the White House buys a pen from you?
The White House buys pens from us every year. Queen Elizabeth bought pens. The Prime Minister of India made the personal decision to buy a cross pen.
And do they usually give them away? So that must be a good market for you then, because if they have to give the pen away as after the signing ceremony, you need to sell them another one.
Absolutely. The President does. When he sponsors, or when he signs a bill that's been sponsored by a number of people, typically what he does is give the pen that he writes with and signs with back to the people who sponsored the bill.
And I think you did the inauguration pens too. I think I remember us doing that story. Are they special pens? Do you have to give? Does Queen Elizabeth need a certain kind of ink, or is it just they just want a nice pen and you do a nice pen?
The pen that we do for the President of the United States, and by the way, we have done the pens for the President of the United States back to Ronald Reagan.
So you do bipartisan pens.
We do bipartisan. The interesting thing, though, is all the Democrats tend to write with left hands, and Republicans write with right hands.
Oh, that's deep. We could do a whole show on that.
Very interesting. But we do a special pen for President Obama. It's got the presidential signature on it, his signature. It's got the presidential seal on that. And also because he's left-handed, the orientation of his signature on the pen is different because he holds the pen differently. You cannot buy that pen on the marketplace.
So I can't get it.
You cannot get it, unfortunately.
Start handing it out.
No,
sign the executive suite scripts. I want to ask you, going back to sort of how you run the business. You have a limited number of suppliers in the U.S., Europe, and Asia that you depend on for the products you need and everything. And I was reading a book recently talking about the sort of the decline in vertical integration, where companies are reliant on these major suppliers. How do you manage that relationship? How do you make sure you're not going to ever, is it just a constant dialogue with those companies in Germany and China and other places? How do you manage that?
Well, Cross believes firmly, and we think one of the bedrock equities of our brand is the quality of the product. We back every one of our writing instruments with a lifetime guarantee. So if you have a problem with that pen in your hand, at any point in time, you come back to us and we'll make sure you're satisfied. So to execute against that kind of a guarantee, we need to ensure that coming out of the box, the product is a fantastically made product. So in actual fact, we actually are fairly vertically integrated. many of the components that go into that writing instrument are actually manufactured in our own facility.
I see.
And that way we feel we can control the quality. The machines that we use and many of the sub-assemblies are things that we have designed ourselves specifically for our writing instrument. For those components and processes that we outsource, we have a very rigorous quality control process to both look at the materials coming into these vendors, as well as the processes they use to change whatever we're buying into our finished product, as well as the product coming out. It is imperative for us to make sure that our product is the best quality product out there in the marketplace. And again, we've decided to do that by vertically integrating much more so than buying lots of things and having other people do it for us.
Sue, and we're coming up on break, but I have to ask, how competitive is the market? Is the market for higher-end pens?
It's very competitive. There's a lot of small players, but there's some very significant players. There is Mont Blanc, many people know them, it's a very high-end division of Richemont Group. There is Parker Pens or Waterman Pens, which is a division of Newell Rubbermaid, a number of German and French and Japanese companies. So it's a very, very
So you're in Lincoln, Rhode Island, thinking about big companies far, far away as your main competitors.
Absolutely. Our focus very much is international. Our consumer is international, our marketplaces are international, our competition's international, even though we happen to be in Rhode Island.
All right, when we come back, we're going to take another break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how the shutdown is affecting AT Cross, even to my surprise, and also about doing business in Rhode Island. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and I'm very pleased to be joined by someone who brought me a new pen, the AT Cross Company's CEO, Chad Mellen. And Chad, we were talking before the show, and I mentioned everything in Washington. I put on my political reporter hat, and you said the shutdown of the federal government, partial shutdown, has even had an impact on AT Cross. Tell me about that.
Actually, remember when we were talking about the R&D and the pen that we're bringing out, which is this antibacterial pen, one of the things that makes this pen special is that it has EPA approval for its properties. Unfortunately, we brought this product into the country ready to get EPA approval so it can go on to the marketplace. There aren't inspectors during the shutdown who can actually look at the product and certify that it is exactly as we specify with the EPA in our government filings. So we can't bring that product into the country and sell it. So it was a major product launch for us this fall. Depending on how long this shutdown goes, we may have to push that launch back into the spring.
So are the pens just sitting in a warehouse somewhere waiting to be inspected?
Yeah.
And you don't know, obviously, because none of us do.
We don't, and unfortunately, I have no insight either, Ted. So, and we've tried to get our way around this, but it's not happening.
Maybe you should sell pens to the House Speaker as well, and you could bring them together or something.
Exactly.
To have it all done over. They can sign a deal with a Cross pen. I want to ask you about being here in Rhode Island,
Sure.
AT Cross. You know, there aren't that many large companies, let alone public companies, as AT Cross was until recently. Do you think AT Cross will stay in Rhode Island with its history here, or could you see a day where you decide to move the headquarters?
Interestingly, Cross is really not an American company per se, in the sense that 65% of our revenue comes from outside the United States, and the vast majority of our employees are outside the United States. But while we may not be an American company per se, we're from the United States, our history is from the United States, we're incorporated in the United States, we pay U.S. taxes. We plan to stay in Rhode Island for a very, very long time. We've got some wonderful workers here. We love the environment. We love being part of the community. I don't see or foresee any situation which has Cross out of Rhode Island.
It does seem like companies, you say yourself how global companies are today. It seems like you could be anywhere. What keeps you in a state like Rhode Island, where we know the economy's had some issues and everything else? Is it just you have everything in place here and there isn't a good reason to move?
Well, we've made the transition from a company that really is paying for labor, physical labor, to a company that's paying for people's minds. And the roughly 150 people we have in Rhode Island right now are people that are skilled people, they're educated people, they're adding value through their minds as opposed to their hands. I think there's a lot of great opportunities to get very talented, smart people coming out of Rhode Island. Now, that said, we do have some challenges in some of our hiring because of the location, and we're not doing a great job of attracting some of the people that are coming out of some of the universities here. Mm-hmm. But This is more of an intellectual capital organization now, and I think Rhode Island's fairly well set up for that. And we have great people. I don't want to move and lose those people either.
Do you see, you mentioned there's some of the challenges, do you see low-hanging fruit? There's been so much talk about economic development and making Rhode Island a good place to do business, a place where people want to stay. Are there things that come to mind to you on a at all regular basis about, if we did that, that might have a real good impact on Rhode Island's economy?
The most important thing for me in terms of running the business is the quality of people I get. So that, to me, really gets down to more of an education issue, and are we getting great people coming in that are talented and ready to add value, whether they're coming out of the high school or the college or the graduate school programs. I'm not as concerned about economic development because we're not going to bring jobs that are now sitting in the UK or sitting in Hong Kong or sitting in Tokyo. We're not going to bring those to Rhode Island. There's a reason why those jobs are there. There is a reason, though, for us to be in Rhode Island, and I think some of the value-added services that we're doing here, the sales, marketing, finance, design, engineering, those are real skilled positions. They're high-paid positions. We can get better people, better educated people that are ready to step into those positions for us. That's a great reason to stay in Rhode Island.
And when you see growth outside, does that feed back into the company here in Rhode Island?
Absolutely.
Do you need more people because you're selling more pens in India?
Absolutely. One of the nice things that's come out of this sale is we're actually looking for more people in Rhode Island. Now, we're not doubling our staff, but they're very high-powered people, high talent, high skill level people. And, you know, we're having some success. We're not having probably the success I'd like to. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Rhode Island, in some of the searches that we're doing, just isn't ranking where we'd like to see it because of education, because of some of the taxes. But this is not business issues. This is more personal issues for the people who want to come
You're
into
talking
Rhode
about
Island.
not for you as a business, but more the individual who's thinking about moving here.
But that does impact me as a business,
Right.
obviously. And you know, in terms of economic development, we had as an organization an experience a few years ago in Rhode Island where we were trying to keep some jobs here and trying to figure out how to do that and if the government could help us. And it just didn't work out. It was about 35 jobs. They were well-paying jobs. But essentially there was no program for a company like us.
How long ago was that?
This was about 2008. And there just really wasn't a program for that small amount. If it was 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs, yes, there was a lot of things to do there. If we were starting up a business, there was a lot of things. But for a business like ours that had 30 jobs they were trying to keep here in more of the labor, working with your hands part of the business, there was no program for us.
All right, only about 20 seconds left, Chad. What's the growth outlook, the economic outlook from your perch for the rest of this year and into 2014?
Well, we're very excited about where the business is going. So I think this company can and will transcend what's going to happen to the overall economy. From what I hear and talking to some of our key accounts, the holiday season, I don't think it's going to be a blockbuster. But we're very, very positive. We've got our fingers in lots of markets across the world. Lots of those markets are growing, so I think we're looking very good.
All right, Chad Mellen, thank you so much from the AT Cross Company. I appreciate you coming in. Queen Elizabeth, if you're watching, order a few more, get a few more Rhode Islanders employed. If you missed any of this episode or any other episode of Executive Suite, you can catch those on WPRI.com. We'll see you next week.